Detective Robert Hayes was in deep sleep when someone knocked on his door at midnight. Knock, knock, knock. He looked at the clock. 11:47 p.m. Who would come at this hour? When he opened the door, his next-door neighbor George Miller stood before him. A 72-year-old man with swollen eyes from crying, struggling to stay on his feet. He held a small photograph in his trembling hands. Robert looked at the photo. An 8-year-old blonde girl, an innocent smile. George's granddaughter Emma. Robert, George's voice was broken. Emma disappeared 2 days ago and the police still haven't found her. Robert's heart sank. He knew Emma well. Sweet, curious little girl. She visited her grandfather every summer. What do the police say? They say they're looking for leads, but George couldn't hold back his tears. 48 hours have passed, Robert. I know what you used to do. Please, you can find her. Please help me. Robert Hayes was 68 years old. He had retired 5 years ago. Retired FBI missing children specialist. 40 years, over 300 missing children found. But now he only tended to his garden. Those days were behind him. George fell to his knees. The old man was begging before the old detective. Robert, please, you're all I have left. Robert knew the statistics. The first 48 hours were critical. After that, chances dropped by 75%. But right now there was a 25% chance, and his 40 years of experience had taught him, if there's a 25% chance, it's worth fighting for. George, get up. We'll find Emma. Looking from outside Detective Robert Hayes' house in suburban Philadelphia, you'd see an ordinary retiree. Every morning he drinks coffee, reads the newspaper, tends his garden. He greets neighbors politely. A quiet, peaceful life. No one knew this man had worked 40 years in the FBI's toughest unit, the Missing Children Unit, where he solved America's darkest cases. He'd found over 300 missing children, some kidnapped, some lost. He'd even solved cases that seemed statistically impossible. But 5 years ago, when he turned 63, the FBI thanked him and said he had to retire. Mandatory retirement age. There was no debate. Robert hadn't argued. Actually, he'd been somewhat relieved. 40 years chasing missing children. 40 years watching families' tears. 40 years living with the stress of, will I find them this time? In every case, it had worn him out. He retired. Returned to quiet life. Garden work, books, peace. George Miller was his neighbor across the street. They'd known each other for 50 years. George was 4 years older than Robert, but still working. He was an electrician, an honest, hard-working man. His wife Margaret had succumbed to cancer 10 years ago. Since that day, George seemed a bit broken. His son Michael and daughter-in-law Karen lived in another city, but they sent their daughter Emma every summer. Emma was George's only source of joy in life. My ray of sunshine, he'd say about the girl. She was 8 years old, curious, talkative, a lovely child. Robert loved Emma too. The girl would come to the garden and ask questions about flowers. Mr. Robert, why are these flowers different colors? Robert would patiently explain. The soil's acidity changes the color, Emma. It's called chemistry in science. Even if Emma didn't understand, she'd listen. Her eyes would sparkle with curiosity. It was Wednesday afternoon at 3:30. Emma had gotten out of school. Normally, George picked her up every day, but he had a doctor's appointment that day. Grandpa, I can walk by myself. It's only 3 blocks, Emma had said. George had hesitated. The neighborhood was safe, but still. But Emma had insisted, and she was actually right. 3 blocks, 10 minutes, a safe neighborhood. Okay, but you'll come straight home. Keep your phone on. You'll be home in 10 minutes, agreed? Agreed, Grandpa. Emma had kissed her grandfather and set off. When it was 3:45, Emma wasn't home. When George called at 4, Emma didn't answer. At 4:15, George rushed outside, running to search the school route. Emma wasn't there. It was like she'd vanished. At 4:30, George called 911 with trembling hands. The police came immediately. They asked questions. When did she leave? What was she wearing? Who were her friends? Did you notice anything strange? An Amber Alert was issued. Emma's photo was everywhere. On TV, social media, billboards. Detective Sarah Martinez took the case. 35 years old, talented, ambitious detective. But she had little experience with missing children cases. For 48 hours, they'd followed all procedures. The school route was searched, security cameras reviewed, neighbors questioned, friends and teachers interviewed. No results. Emma seemed to have evaporated. No trace, no clue. George called the police every hour. Did you find anything? Please tell me something. Mr. Miller, we're doing everything we can. Please be patient. But 48 hours had passed and there was nothing. George was losing hope. Friday night at 11:47, George knocked on Robert's door. Robert was sleeping, but the door sound woke him. Who at this hour? When he opened the door and saw George, he was shocked. George was destroyed. His eyes were bloodshot, his face pale, trembling, struggling to stand. Robert. His voice was hoarse, speaking with difficulty. Emma disappeared 2 days ago and the police still haven't found her. Robert immediately took George by the arm and brought him inside. Sat him down. George, calm down. What happened? What do the police say? They're following leads, they say, but Robert, there's nothing. It's like Emma vanished as if she never existed. George couldn't hold back his tears. The old man was crying there in Robert's living room. Robert, I know what you did. You found missing children at the FBI. 40 years, hundreds of children. You're the expert. Robert listened silently. I'm retired, George. It's been 5 years. Please, Robert, George shouted. Then he composed himself. His voice became thin. Please, I'm begging you. The police are young, good, but inexperienced. You're different. You know how to find them. Robert looked at George. 50 years of friendship. This wasn't just a neighbor. He was a friend. Then he looked at Emma's photograph. It sat on the table. 8 years old, blonde, innocent smile. Statistics automatically appeared in Robert's mind. 40 years of habit. The first 48 hours are critical. After that, success rate drops 75%. But there was still a 25% chance. And Robert Hayes had seen cases he'd won with 25% odds over 40 years. George, we'll start early tomorrow morning. We'll find Emma. George closed his eyes. Relief, hope, tears. Thank you, Robert. Thank you. After George left, Robert couldn't sleep. He went down to the basement. In the basement corner was a closet. He hadn't opened it in 5 years. Dusty. An old FBI badge box sat on top. When he opened it, inside was FBI badge, retired, old case files, missing children profiling notes, systematic analysis guides gained from 40 years of experience. Robert picked up the badge. It was heavy, not just physically, but emotionally too. He looked in the mirror. 68 years old, his hair completely white, his face full of wrinkles. But his eyes were still sharp, analytical, detective's eyes. Emma, I'll find you, he said quietly. The next morning at 8 o'clock, Robert went to the police station. He gave his name at reception. I want to speak with Detective Sarah Martinez about the Emma Miller case. A few minutes later, a young female detective came. Professional suit, serious expression, but she looked tired, like she hadn't slept for 48 hours. Mr. Hayes, how can I help you? Detective Martinez, I'm Robert Hayes, retired FBI. I want to help with the Emma Miller case. Sarah frowned. Mr. Hayes, this is an active investigation. Unfortunately, we don't need civilian help, but if you have information, I'm not a civilian. I worked 40 years in the FBI Missing Children Unit. I'm a specialist. Sarah paused. The name sounded familiar. She returned to her office, quickly searched on her computer. The screen filled. Detective Robert Hayes, FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit, Missing Children Division, 40 years, active duty, 307 missing children, cases solved, 92% success rate, FBI Excellence Medal recipient. Sarah's eyes widened. Legendary Detective Robert Hayes. Everyone at the FBI knew his name, and he was standing right in front of her. Commander Hayes, I'm sorry I didn't recognize you, but you said you retired. I did retire, yes. But Emma Miller is my neighbor's granddaughter. George asked me for help, and I'm going to look at this case. Sarah hesitated. There were procedures. Retired personnel couldn't be involved in active investigations, but standing before her was the FBI's most successful missing children detective, and 48 hours had passed. There were no clues. Commander Hayes, technically I can't include you, but if you'd share your insights with me, I'd be very grateful. Robert nodded. That was enough. Can I see Emma's file? Sarah took Robert to the conference room. Emma Miller's file was on the table. Photos, reports, security camera footage, interrogation notes. Robert sat at the table, put on his glasses, opened the file. 40 years of experience kicked in. Automatic, systematic. First, he looked at the timeline. 3:30 p.m., Emma left school. 3:35 p.m., seen on school security camera, walking alone. 3:40 p.m., a neighbor on the second block saw her, walking normally. 3:45 p.m. Nothing after that? Robert asked. No, it's like she vanished. After 3:45, no camera saw her. No neighbor noticed. Robert looked at the map. The route between school and George's house. 3 blocks. Residential area. Safe neighborhood. Security cameras? We checked all of them. Emma doesn't appear on any after 3:45, Robert thought. How does a child disappear? 3 possibilities. She went willingly, ran away. She got lost, accident, got confused. She was taken. Did Emma have a reason to run away? Problems at home? Bullying at school? No. George is a wonderful grandfather. Emma was happy. Her teacher said she has many friends, loved at school. Possibility of getting lost? 3 blocks. Emma walked that route hundreds of times. It's impossible she'd get confused. One possibility remained. Abduction. Robert looked at the photos again. Emma, 8 years old, blonde, blue eyes, sweet. A sinking feeling. 40 years of experience was telling him something. This is an abduction, Robert said quietly. A planned abduction. Sarah looked up. How can you be sure? Because Emma was seen at 3:40, disappeared at 3:45, 5 minutes. There are 12 security cameras on 3 blocks. None saw her. This isn't coincidence. This means someone knows the cameras. Sarah paused. A neighborhood resident? Maybe. Or a very careful person. Robert examined the file again. Then he stopped. Has there been a ransom demand? No. Robert's face changed. This was bad. In missing children cases, there were 2 types of abduction. For ransom, this was considered good news. The child would be kept alive. Without ransom, this was bad news. 48 hours have passed. No ransom demand. This isn't a professional kidnapping. This is something different. Sarah became worried. What do you mean? Robert didn't answer. But he knew. He'd seen these types of cases for 40 years. Some people took children for other reasons, and those reasons were never good. Robert watched the security camera footage again. 3:40 p.m. Emma appeared on the second block, walking normally, phone in her hand, looked happy. Then she turned a corner and was never seen again. Robert paused the video. Is there a camera on this corner? No, there's no camera on that corner. Residential area, private property. Robert looked at the map. That corner. It was at the start of the 3rd block, last 100 meters to George's house. What's on that corner? Sarah looked at the file. A park. Small neighborhood park. Children play there. Is there a camera in the park? No. Robert stood up. We need to go to the park. Robert and Sarah went to the park. It was a small neighborhood park. Swings, slide, a few benches. Robert examined the surroundings. Detective's eyes scanned every detail. The park was empty. A few mothers were playing with their children. Would Emma pass through this park? Robert asked. Sarah thought. Probably. The shortest route between school and home goes through this park. Robert walked, crossed the park. In the back among the trees was a small path. Where does this path lead? To the back street, parking lot. Robert walked toward that path. A tree-lined, shadowy path. Cameras couldn't see it. He saw something on the ground. He bent down, a small ribbon, pink. He remembered the photo of Emma's school bag. It had a pink ribbon on it. Sarah, send this to the lab. There might be fingerprints. Then he examined the surroundings more carefully. Tire marks on the ground, vehicle tracks. A vehicle came here. When? Sarah made a call. Let me ask the traffic team. A few minutes later, the answer came. 2 days ago, Wednesday afternoon, a white van, license plate not visible. Robert's heart raced. White van, classic abduction vehicle. When Emma was passing through this path, the van was waiting here. They took her. Sarah was shocked. But no one saw anything? Because it's the back of the park, no one sees. It was very fast. When Emma was passing through the park, the van stopped. They took her, left. 30 seconds, maybe less. But why didn't Emma resist? Didn't she scream? Robert thought. 2 possibilities. Either they threatened her, or she knew them. Sarah froze. She knew them. Children resist strangers. They scream. But with someone familiar, They trust. Who would Emma know? Neighborhood resident, neighbor, friend's family, teacher, anyone. Robert and Sarah returned to the station. Robert made a list. Suspects, neighborhood residents who knew Emma, school staff, friends' families, George's acquaintances. We'll interrogate all of them, Sarah said. No, Robert said. Interrogating will alert them. We need to investigate quietly. Robert looked at the files. Neighbor interrogations. Over 50 people had been questioned in 48 hours. Everyone had alibis. Everyone said, I was home that day. But Robert noticed something. One neighbor was missing. Wasn't marked on the list. Who is this person? Marcus Webb. 45 years old. George's neighbor 2 doors down. Why wasn't he questioned? Sarah looked at the file. I don't know. Maybe he wasn't home. Not added to the list. Robert stopped. Wasn't home? He thought. Wednesday, 3:45 p.m. The moment Emma disappeared. Marcus Webb wasn't home. Where was he? Research this man. Everything. Workplace, history, criminal record, all of it. An hour later, Sarah brought the information. Marcus Webb, 45 years old. Technician, security systems installation. Single. Lives alone. Criminal record. 15 years ago in another city. Inappropriate behavior with children charge. Case dismissed. Insufficient evidence. Robert's blood ran cold. Security systems? Yes, he installs camera systems in homes, workplaces. Robert understood. Marcus Webb knew cameras. Which corners had cameras, which didn't. And 15 years ago, a charge involving children. This is our man, Robert said. Sarah hesitated. But there's no evidence, just, I did this for 40 years, Sarah. Trust me, this is the guy. What do we do? His house. Let's get a search warrant. There's not enough cause for a search warrant. The judge won't approve. Robert hit the table angrily. The old detective against young police procedures. Then I'll go myself. Commander Hayes, that's illegal. Emma has 72 hours, maybe less. Procedures won't save her. Robert stood up. He was determined. I'm going to Marcus Webb's house. Don't come. It won't be on official record. Sarah looked on helplessly. 10 p.m. Robert was outside Marcus Webb's house. The lights were off. The car wasn't in the garage. He wasn't home. Robert went to the backyard. Skills learned in 40 years at the FBI were still in memory. He opened the back door, entered silently. The inside of the house was strange. Clean but cold. No personal items, no photos, like no one lived there. Robert found the basement door. It was locked, but Robert knew how to pick locks. 30 seconds, opened. He went down the basement stairs. It was dark. He ran his hand along the wall, found the switch. When he turned on the light, what he saw, his heart stopped. The basement was a prison. Sound insulation on the walls, a small bed, chains, and on the table, Emma's school bag. Robert immediately called. Sarah, I'm at Marcus Webb's house. Emma's bag is in the basement. This place is set up like a prison. Commander, get out of there. It's illegal. Emma's not here, but she was. He moved her somewhere else. We need to find Marcus Webb. Now. Sarah understood. Procedures didn't matter. Emma's life was in danger. I'm putting out an APB. Marcus Webb, white van, all units. Robert examined the basement, looked for clues, anything. He found pieces of paper in the trash, torn invoice. He put them together. Storage rental, Industrial District, 3rd Street. Sarah, Industrial District, 3rd Street. There's a warehouse. Go there. 20 minutes later. Police cars surrounded the warehouse. SWAT was ready. But Robert waited. 68 years old, but 40 years of experience had taught him patience. Sarah, if we raid, Emma will be in danger. We need to make Webb talk first. He called out with a megaphone. Marcus Webb, FBI, come out, you're surrounded. Silence. Then the warehouse door opened slightly. Marcus Webb came out, hands in the air, but his eyes were cold. He wasn't sorry. Where's Emma? Robert shouted. Marcus smiled. You won't find her. Robert approached angrily. Tell me, that child is innocent. No child is innocent. Robert wanted to punch him, but restrained himself. SWAT entered the warehouse. 10 minutes later, they came out. They were carrying Emma. She was alive, unconscious, but alive, at the hospital. Emma woke up. When she opened her eyes, she saw her grandfather. Grandpa, George was crying. Emma, my ray of sunshine. They embraced. Robert stood at the door, watching. Emma turned her head, saw Robert. Mr. Robert, You saved me. Robert smiled. You're a strong girl, Emma. You never gave up. 1 week later, Robert was planting flowers in his garden. George came, a box in his hands. Robert, this is for you. Thanking you isn't enough, but inside was a watch, inscription on it. Heroes have no age. George and Emma. Robert's eyes welled up. Thank you, George. Emma came running. Mr. Robert, can I ask about the flowers? Robert laughed. Of course, Emma, always. He was 68 years old, retired. Everyone said old, but he had saved a child's life. Because experience never retires. If Detective Robert Hayes' story moved you, subscribe to Veterans Tales like this video. Share your thoughts about the importance of experience in the comments. Experience grows with age. Do you have a Robert in your life who saved you? Share in the comments. See you in the next story.